My name is Jacques, and this is my data story case study review. The case study I chose to review is titled, Nike says its $250 running shoes will make you run much faster. What if that's actually true? This case study was done by Kevin Quealy and Josh Katz. More about them a little later. First, let's go to the article. The article opens up with an ethical question for our readers. If a running shoe made you run 25% faster, would it be fair to wear it in a race? They follow this up with a claim that Nike makes about the running shoe released a few years ago, the Zoom Vaporflys, that this shoe is up to 4% better than the next best running shoe out there today. The rest of the article is structured in a pretty logical and easy to read manner, where Quealy and Katz walk us through the data that they used, where it came from, and the 4 scenarios or metrics they chose to evaluate in order to substantiate Nike's claims. They present the data or the results of the data in a manner which is pretty easy for the reader to interpret, using things such as histograms, box plots, confidence intervals. At the very end of the article, they present some arguments as to why the reader should take these results with a grain of salt. But then they also present some reasons as to why there may be some merit in these results. Who do we have to thank for this well-written article? Well, there's Kevin Quealy. He's a reporter and graphics editor at the New York Times. He's got a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's degree in journalism. He's an avid runner. He ran the 2018 Providence Marathon actually wearing Vaporflys. And he's done some other cool analysis around sports when I was browsing his GitHub page. Then there's Josh Katz. He's also a graphics editor for the New York Times since 2013. He's got a master's degree in statistics and not so much a runner. What data did they use and where did it come from? Data came from 2 places, public race reports and Strava. Strava is primarily used for the running shoe type. 280,000 marathon and over 215,000 half marathon races from over 700 races since 2014. Information gathered consisted of things such as participant's name, age, gender, prior race history, race name and year, shoes worn, overall run time, splits, maps, routes, weather, etc. How did they process the data? What tools did they use? So this is where I really had to do some digging, as Quealy and Katz didn't really want to share this information openly. But lucky for me, there were some data enthusiasts who set out to replicate their analysis. The data was scraped from Strava and sites like marathonguide.com and output into a CSV file. These CSV files between the race data and the shoe data were more than likely merged with things such as pandas and Python. R was chosen to create the model for their predictive analysis, and HTML and CSS were used to create the website and the visuals, the charts, histograms, etc. Takeaway. This table and visual does a pretty good job of summarizing the takeaway from this analysis. The shoes, the Vaporflys, tend to be outliers when looked at the different scenarios with respect to the performance of the runners. The expected improvement of the overall race times is approximately 4%. You'll see this number pop up quite a bit. The likelihood of running a personal record was 68%. These results, like I said, were pretty consistent across the various categories of runners. Strengths. I found the topic of interest was well written, flowed nicely, easy to read, did a great job of catching the reader's attention and not just presenting the data, but also posing a bigger question, like what's fair in sports with respect to technological advances. This kind of encourages the readers to think a little bit deeper about the subject. It wasn't just here's the results of the data. They provided a bit of context, which I think keeps the readers engaged. Visualizations were simple and effective, for the most part. I think the majority of people understand confidence intervals and histograms. They didn't try to overcomplicate things or mislead readers, just using a simple point or average. They did a great job of linking any sort of claims or references they made, whether it has to do with products, other studies, news releases. I found this extremely helpful versus having to Google or fact check them myself. They also did a good job of providing the pros and the cons of each scenario they looked at when analyzing the data. They even dedicated sections of the article to disclose some reasons to be skeptical and why not to be skeptical. The scenarios they chose to analyze I thought were relevant and of value. Weaknesses. Their analysis did lack some transparency. As I had already mentioned, I had to do some research around the tools they could have used, and they didn't openly disclose that. Things such as building their model, they could have gone into a bit more detail around the factors they used in their final model, maybe even the significance of these factors, any sort of assumptions made, or even provided some R-squared values. But, to be fair, I think it was just more of a case of catering to their audience and not trying to be deceptive. They didn't really explain the science and technology of the shoe's performance. I think it could have been interesting to have included some visuals, makeup of the shoe, maybe even explain how the technology works in theory versus claiming it just acts as a slingshot. Then you had the numbers from their analysis to sort of support the theory behind the performance of the shoe. More interactive tools for the reader couldn't hurt. I saw somewhere online someone created this calculator that would show you your improvement in time if they were to wear the Vaporflys. This was just based on a few factors, such as your half marathon or marathon times, weight, height, gender. I think including something like this could have gone a little bit further to increase reader engagement. Some visuals may not have had much value due to a large part of the margin of error. I believe it was the median change in race times when runners switched shoes. It was quite a large confidence interval for each shoe, so that visual definitely needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And that is my presentation.